Subscribe to Starbound Tales at HFY Starbound for more original HFY, sci-fi legends, and humanity-first stories every week. When death itself walked into the academy classroom, every alien froze in terror, except one human girl. She didn't scream. She didn't flinch. She smiled. What followed shocked the galaxy. This is the story of Alara Ven, a young Deathworlder who stood against the galaxy's most feared killer without raising a weapon. In her calm defiance, she revealed the truth of Earth, a world of endless danger, where humanity learned to laugh in the face of death itself. The academy bell rang, deep and metallic, echoing across the marble halls. Students of every kind, scaled, feathered, and furred, rushed through the tall crystal doors into the main lecture chamber. It was an ordinary morning at the Interstellar Academy, where the brightest young minds of dozens of species came to learn, ordinary until the doors opened again. The sound was soft, but every student froze. Heavy boots stepped into the hall, and a figure walked slowly across the shining floor. He was tall, wrapped in black armor that carried scars of 100 battles. His name was whispered across colonies and outposts, always spoken with fear. Some called him a bounty hunter, others an executioner. Most simply called him the killer. The room turned cold. Alien students huddled close, eyes wide, skin scales paling, feathers ruffling. The teachers stiffened, their voices caught in their throats. Nobody understood why he was here. He had no reason to be. He was not a student. He was not a scholar. He was death walking on two legs, and death had stepped into their classroom. The killer did not rush. He walked with the calmness of someone who had ended lives too many times to count. Each step echoed a drumbeat of dread. His helmet visor glowed faint red, sweeping across the room. Everyone tried to avoid his gaze. Everyone except one. At the back of the class, near the window, a human girl sat quietly. She looked no older than 17. Her hair was tied in a simple braid, her uniform slightly wrinkled from rushing to class. She looked almost ordinary, except for one thing. She did not flinch. Where others trembled, her eyes stayed steady. Where others turned away, she lifted her head, and as the killer stepped closer, she did something no one expected. She smiled, not mockery, not arrogance. Just a calm, almost gentle smile. Whispers rose among the students. "Is she insane?" hissed a core with trembling mandibles. "That's a Deathbringer. He has ended entire crews. Why isn't she afraid?" whispered an Ilari, feathers shivering. The killer stopped. The entire class held its breath. His visor turned, locking on her face. He tilted his head slightly, as though confused. He had seen prey scream, beg, and collapse. He had seen warriors fight to their last breath. But he had never seen a young girl look at him like this, like he was nothing more than a curious shadow passing by. The silence grew unbearable. Students pressed against the walls, praying he would not notice them. Finally, the killer spoke. His voice was low, metallic, and carried the weight of 1,000 final moments. "You, human." Every head snapped toward her. She still didn't move, still smiling faintly. Yes. Her voice was calm, almost casual, as if a teacher had called on her to answer a question. The killer's gauntlet tightened on the hilt of his blade. The air seemed to grow heavier. "Do you know who I am?" She tilted her head. Of course, the class gasped. No one dared speak to him like that. No one dared look him in the eye, much less smile. The killer stepped closer. His boots rang like thunder. "Then why," he asked slowly, "do you not fear me?" The girl leaned back in her chair. Her eyes never wavered. She seemed to study him like one might study a puzzle. Then she said, "Because fear is for those who don't understand what stands before them." The words cut deeper than any blade. The room was silent again. Every alien student trembling, their bodies pressing into corners. Even the teachers dared not interfere. They knew this could end in blood. The killer's hand hovered over his weapon. His instinct screamed to strike, to crush the insolence. But something strange pressed against him. Not a weapon, not a shield, but a presence. A will. The calm confidence of someone who is not prey. He narrowed his eyes behind the visor. "You think you understand me?" The girl shrugged lightly. "I don't need to. I only need to know what you're not. What I'm not." His voice was sharp, dangerous. "You're not the first predator I've seen," she said softly. "And you won't be the last." Gasps echoed around the room. The killer froze. For the first time in years, his steps faltered. Something in her voice carried weight beyond her years, like the echo of storms and fire. The human girl leaned forward on her desk, resting her chin on her hand. Her smile remained steady. "Where I come from," she continued, "death walks with us every day. Teeth, claws, venom, storms, fire. The world itself tries to kill us from the moment we are born. Do you really think you frighten me?" The killer's grip on his blade loosened. He did not draw. He did not strike. Instead, he stared at her in silence. The room, however, was not silent. The students whispered to each other, shocked beyond reason. "Death Worlder." One breathed. "A real one." Another hissed. "They say humans come from a cursed planet, a place where even the air can kill you." The killer finally spoke again, his tone darker. "You are bold, girl. Boldness ends in graves." Her smile widened just slightly. "Maybe, but so does fear." The words hung like thunder in the chamber. The killer took one step back. For the first time since he entered, he was uncertain. The human girl's calm had shaken something deep inside him, something he did not admit even to himself. He stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he turned his head to scan the room. Every other student looked away in terror. Only she kept watching. Only she smiled. Finally, he pointed a finger at her. "We will speak again." Then he walked away, his heavy boots echoing as he left the chamber. The doors closed behind him with a final, booming sound. The silence afterward was deafening. Students exhaled all at once, feathers drooping, scales loosening, hearts pounding. Some looked at the girl with awe, others with fear. None could understand how she had faced death itself without flinching. The girl only leaned back in her chair, eyes drifting toward the window. Outside, 2 suns burned over the alien city, casting golden light across the spires. Her smile softened, almost wistful. The class would never forget that moment. And the galaxy, though it didn't know it yet, would soon whisper her name the same way, whispered his. The girl who smiled at death. The classroom was not the same after that day. The moment the killer had left, strange heaviness remained in the air. Every student sat stiff in their seats, trying to make sense of what they had just witnessed. For many, it was unthinkable. A being feared across systems had entered their class and had left without drawing blood. Not because he showed mercy. Not because someone stopped him. But because of a single human girl who had looked him in the eye and smiled. Whispers grew like wildfire. By the time the day ended, every corner of the academy buzzed with rumors. "Did you see her?" She didn't blink. She spoke to him like he was nothing. Impossible. No one can face him and live. The human girl, however, walked calmly through the halls, as if nothing had happened. Her braid swayed gently down her back, her boots tapping softly against the crystal floor. Other students parted before her, not daring to block her way. Some stared with awe, others with suspicion, but none could understand the calm smile that never left her face. Her name was Alara Ven. That evening, the academy dining hall was louder than usual. Long tables stretched across the grand chamber, filled with students of every kind. Trays clattered, voices rose, tails flicked, feathers ruffled. And at the center of it all sat Alara, quietly eating her meal as though she wasn't the focus of every whisper. Across the room, a group of scaled Velen students huddled together. One slammed his claws against the table. She must be insane. That's the only answer. No one sane would smile at death. Feathered Ilari beside him shook her head quickly. Not insane. No. There's something else. Didn't you hear the way she spoke? Like she's seen worse than him, the Velen snarled. There is nothing worse than the killer. But even as he spoke, doubt shivered in his tone. At another table, younger students leaned forward, eyes wide with excitement. "Do you think it's true?" one whispered. "That humans live on a death world? That everything there tries to kill them?" "I heard stories," another said softly. "Acid rains, giant beasts, poisoned skies. They say humans are born where no one else could survive." The rumors grew with every telling, each more dramatic than the last. But none of it seemed to bother Alara. She ate her food quietly, her calm smile never fading. That night, when the sun set and the spires of the city glowed with silver light, Alara sat alone in the courtyard garden. The air smelled of alien flowers, their petals glowing faintly under the moons. She leaned against the trunk of a crystal-barked tree, looking up at the stars. She thought of home, of Earth, of the forests that hid predators in the shadows, storms that could tear apart entire towns, of oceans that could swallow fleets whole. To others, Earth was a cursed planet. To her, it was simply home. And she wondered if the killer had seen that in her smile. Her thoughts were broken by the sound of footsteps. She turned her head, and a shadow stepped into the courtyard. The killer. Her calm did not waver. "You followed me?" she said softly. He stopped a few steps away, his visor glowing in the dark. For a long moment he said nothing. Then finally his voice rumbled like distant thunder. "No one has ever looked at me the way you did." Alara tilted her head. "Most people fear what they don't understand." He took a step closer. "And you, understand me?" She shook her head slowly. "No, but I understand fear, and I learned long ago not to bow to it." Silence stretched between them. The killer's hands twitched slightly at his sides. He had come expecting to intimidate her, perhaps to test her. Instead, he found himself unsettled. "You think your smile can shield you?" he growled. Alara looked back up at the stars. "My smile isn't for me. It's for everyone else. If I stay calm, they stay calm. If I show fear, they break. That's how humans survive. We laugh in the face of storms, because storms never stop coming." The killer's visor flickered. Inside, his expression was hidden, but something in his posture shifted. The weight of her words pressed heavier than armor. He stepped back into the shadows, his voice low. "You are dangerous, girl. More dangerous than you know." She finally looked at him again, her calm smile steady. "No, I just learned not to look away." Then he was gone, vanishing into the night like smoke. The next morning, the academy was louder than ever. Stories spread that the killer had been seen again, this time following the human girl. Fear mixed with fascination. Why her? Why did he not strike? What secret gave her such strength? In the lecture hall, as the students gathered, Alara entered quietly and took her seat at the back. Conversations hushed instantly. All eyes turned to her, some full of fear, others with respect. She ignored them all, placing her books neatly on her desk. The doors creaked open. Everyone froze. Heavy boots echoed. The killer stepped into the room once more, but this time he did not scan the crowd. He walked directly to the back, directly to her desk. Gasps filled the room. Teachers froze in shock. The killer stopped just in front of her, and Alara smiled. The entire class held its breath. The killer leaned down, his visor inches from her face. His voice was low, dangerous, but almost. "Uncertain? Tell me, human, what are you really?" Alara's eyes never wavered. Her calm voice cut through the silence. "I'm a Death Worlder, and you're standing in my class." The room was silent. The killer loomed over Alara, visor glowing faintly, blade at his side. Every alien student pressed against the walls, hearts pounding. They had seen this moment before. Someone standing too boldly before him. It always ended in blood. But this time was different. Alara sat calmly at her desk, her book still open, her hands folded neatly in front of her. She did not move, did not tremble, and her smile did not fade. The calmness of a human Death Worlder filled the air like a silent storm. The killer's gauntlet twitched. Slowly, he pulled his blade free. The weapon hummed a low growl of energy. Students gasped. Some covered their eyes. A few whispered prayers to gods who had never answered. Yet Alara's eyes remained steady. He raised the blade. The red glow cast shadows across her face. Still, she did not move. The tension snapped like a wire stretched too tight. The killer struck. The blade came down fast. Faster than the eyes of most could follow. But just as it fell toward her desk, it stopped. Inches above the surface, the weapon trembled, caught in a frozen moment. Gasps echoed through the hall. The teacher stared, unable to understand. The killer's arm shook. He was not weak. He was not slow. He had ended warriors in single blows. But now, for the first time in years, his hand refused to obey. His strike would not fall. Alara's smile deepened. She leaned forward, her voice soft, yet sharp as ice. You feel it, don't you? The killer's visor flickered. His muscles strained. He tried to force the blade downward, but it trembled in the air as though some unseen force resisted. What? Is this? His voice was low, uncertain. Alara tilted her head. It's not power. Not magic. It's you. It's your own fear rising at last. The room froze. Every student stared, barely breathing. The killer staggered back a step, lowering the blade. He had faced soldiers, assassins, war machines, but none of them had ever looked at him like this. None had smiled while his weapon was drawn. None had made his hands shake. Alara rose slowly from her seat. She was not tall, not armored, not armed. Yet her presence filled the room more than his black armor ever had. Her voice carried with quiet certainty. On Earth, we grow up surrounded by death. Poison in the air, predators in the dark, storms that flatten cities. We learn young that fear only feeds the things that want to kill us. If we let it rule us, we die. So we laugh, we smile. We look danger in the eye because fear does not protect us, it weakens us. The student shivered, listening to every word. The killer stared at her, blade still trembling in his hand. His breath came heavy, though he tried to hide it. This girl, this child, was stripping him of the very weapon he had always wielded best. Fear. Alara took one step forward. Her calm voice cut through the silence again. You call yourself death, but death does not scare us. We live with it every day. What are you to me, then? Just another shadow. The killer's blade lowered fully now, hanging limp at his side. His visor dimmed slightly, as though the fire inside it faltered. Around them, the whispers grew louder. Did you see? He hesitated. He couldn't strike her. The human made him stop. The killer turned sharply, the whispers clawing at him like knives. He had entered this place as a predator, but now the eyes of the galaxy's future looked at him with something worse than fear. They looked at him with doubt. He growled low, forcing his blade back into its sheath. This isn't over, he said, voice harsh, but his words carried less weight than before. Alara only smiled again, calm and steady. I never said it was. The killer turned and stormed out, his boots slamming against the floor, each step louder than the last. The door slammed shut behind him. For a long time, no one moved. The students sat frozen, the echo of that moment burning in their minds. The teachers exchanged uneasy glances, unable to decide whether to punish Alara for provoking him, or to protect her as the only one who had stood against him. Finally, a young Zell student whispered, voice trembling. She made him afraid. The words rippled through the class like lightning. Eyes turned toward Alara, some filled with awe, others with unease, but all with the same thought. If a human could make death itself hesitate, what else were humans capable of? Alara gathered her books calmly, as if nothing unusual had happened. She walked toward the door, her braids swinging gently, her boots quiet against the floor. Every step echoed louder than the killer's had, not in sound, but in meaning. The class whispered after her. Deathworlder. Fearless. Impossible. But Alara only kept walking, her smile calm, her eyes steady. For her, this was only the beginning. The academy did not sleep that night. What happened in the classroom spread like fire through the corridors, across the dormitories, and into the echoing lecture halls. The story shifted with every telling, yet one truth remained the same. The killer had raised his blade against the human girl, and he had stopped. No one could explain it. No one dared believe it. Yet the memory of his trembling hand burned into every witness's mind. By morning, the academy buzzed like a storm. Whispers followed Alara wherever she walked. That's her. The human. She faced him and smiled. They say death itself hesitated. Alien students stared at her with wide eyes. Some looked at her with awe, others with fear. But Alara walked calmly, her braids swaying, her gaze steady. The smile she carried was the same calm one she had worn when the killer stood over her in the dining hall. The rumors boiled hotter. Long tables creaked under the weight of students leaning close, speaking in hushed voices. One quar with pale mandibles leaned toward his friends. Do you know what humans are? They say they come from a cursed planet, a death world. A feathered Ayalari tilted her head, her voice a whisper of silk. A world where predators rule, where storms tear the skies, where even the rivers poison flesh. The core nodded. And yet they thrive there. They laugh in the face of danger. They say even their children play in places where we would not survive a minute. Nearby, Scaled Velen slammed his claws onto the table. Lies, he snarled. No one could survive such a place. No one. But the doubt in his voice betrayed him. Across the hall, younger students huddled, their eyes shining with a mixture of fear and wonder. Did you see her face when the blade stopped? One whispered. She didn't even blink. Another nodded. She said, death doesn't scare them. Can you imagine? Not fearing death itself? The rumors swelled louder and louder until even the teachers could not quiet them. The words Deathworlder and Earth spread like seeds caught in the wind. That evening, in the great library beneath the Academy's spire, a group of alien scholars gathered around a holodisplay. Old records flickered to life, showing images of Earth, jungles thick with predators, oceans that raged with storms, deserts where nothing should live but did. The Ilari scholar shook her head, feathers shivering. It is true. The records were never lies. Earth is one of the most dangerous worlds catalogued. Gravity heavier, air unstable, predators without number. It should not support civilization at all. The core beside her clicked his mandibles nervously. Yet humans thrive. They build cities. They reach the stars. They send their children to our academies. The library fell silent at that. For centuries, humans had been treated as curiosities, strange but unremarkable. But now, after Alara's smile and the killer's hesitation, the truth began to feel much larger in her dormitory that night. Alara sat on her bed while the whispers outside drifted through the door. She brushed her braid over her shoulder, staring at the stars through the window. Her calm smile lingered, but in her eyes was something deeper memory. She remembered Earth, the sound of wolves in the forest at night, the hiss of snakes hidden in tall grass, the endless storms crashing against the coast. She remembered laughter too, her family, her friends, children playing under the shadow of danger. On Earth, death was always near. But on Earth, life had learned to never bow. She closed her eyes, breathing slowly. Tomorrow would bring more whispers, more stares. But she would not flinch. The next day, the academy doors shook again with heavy footsteps. The killer had returned. Students froze in the halls as he passed, pressing themselves against the walls. His armor was darker than the shadows, his visor burning red. But something in his stride had changed. He did not radiate the same unshakable certainty. His presence was still terrifying, but beneath it was doubt. He walked into the lecture chamber, scanning the crowd. Every eye turned away except hers. Alara looked up from her desk, calm as ever. And once again she smiled. The killer's hand tightened at his side. Whispers rippled through the room like waves. Will he strike again? She'll stop him. No, this time she'll die. The killer stepped closer, his voice a low growl. You spoke of Earth, of your cursed world. Is that where your fearlessness comes from? Ilara tilted her head slightly. Not cursed. Just honest. Earth doesn't lie about what it is. It tries to kill us every day. And so we learn we either rise stronger or we fall. The class listened, hearts pounding. Even the teachers leaned forward, unable to look away. Ilara's voice was calm, steady. That's why I smiled. Because you're not the first shadow I've seen. And you won't be the last. The killer froze. Around him, the whispers grew louder, feeding on his hesitation. The words spread like thunder through the chamber. Deathworlder. The legend of Earth had come alive in their classroom, and for the first time, the galaxy began to believe. The killer had faced armies. He had walked into war zones where soldiers scattered like frightened animals. He had seen hardened captains drop their weapons at the sound of his name. Fear was his weapon. Fear had always obeyed him, until now. He replayed the moment in his mind again and again. The human girl's smile, calm and unshaken. The way his hand had trembled when he tried to strike. The sound of her voice, steady as stone, saying that death did not scare her for the first time in years. His thoughts were not sharpened by certainty, but clouded by doubt. He walked through the academy's corridors, heavy boots echoing. Students scrambled out of his path, eyes wide, feathers and scales shivering. Normally, their terror fed him, but now their fear felt thin, shallow, worthless, because in his mind, he saw only one face. Hers Lair, the Deathworlder girl who had not flinched. He paused before a window, looking out at the twin suns rising over the alien city. The light glinted across his armor, but it did not warm him. For the first time, he felt something colder than space itself creeping through his chest. Was it possible? Was it true? Could there really be a people who did not bow to fear? Behind him, whispers stirred. Two students hurried down the hall, unaware he was near. They say he couldn't strike her. Impossible. He never hesitates. I heard his hand shook, like he was afraid of her. The killer's fists clenched. The rumors were spreading. His reputation, built from years of blood and silence, was being eroded by a single human girl's smile. He stormed away from the window, his boots striking harder, faster. But no matter where he went, the whispers followed. In the lecture chamber, Ilara sat calmly at her desk as always. The other students kept their distance, not daring to sit too close. Some looked at her with reverence, others with suspicion, but none could look away. When the killer entered, silence crashed over the room. He strode down the aisle, stopping in front of her desk. The air was heavy, every breath thick with tension. You think you've beaten me, he growled, voice rough behind his visor. Ilara looked up, meeting his gaze without hesitation. I didn't beat you, she said softly. You stopped yourself. The words struck like a blade to his chest. His hand twitched toward his weapon, but again he did not draw. The students leaned forward, whispering furiously. She's right. He didn't strike. He's afraid. Death fears her, the killer snarled. You speak boldly for someone unarmed. Ilara's smile deepened. I don't need a weapon. My world already armed me. Her words hung in the air. Images of Earth filled the minds of those who had heard the rumors. Endless storms, beasts with claws longer than knives, oceans that swallowed fleets. The killer stared at her, his voice low, almost uncertain. And you think that makes you stronger than me? Ilara tilted her head slightly. I don't think... I know. Silence pressed down on the class. The killer's visor flickered, as if his resolve wavered. He had always been certain of his strength, certain of his dominance. But now, standing before her, the certainty slipped through his fingers like sand. He turned sharply, striding away, his armor clattering with each heavy step. The door slammed behind him. The room exhaled at once. Students rushed to Ilara's desk, voices overlapping. How did you do it? Are you really from Earth? Is it true that everything there wants to kill you? Ilara looked at them calmly, folding her hands. It's true. Earth is not kind, but that's why we're still here. We learned not to break. The awe in their eyes grew. The whispers of Death World are spread even faster now. But in the shadows of the academy, the killer sat alone, his blade resting across his knees. His hands clenched the hilt so tightly the metal creaked. He had killed warlords. He had silenced rebellions. He had made empires tremble. But he could not silence her smile. For the first time in his life, doubt gnawed at him. A quiet voice he could not escape whispered inside his head, "What if she is stronger than you?" The thought shook him more than any battle wound. The killer could no longer ignore. The whispers had spread beyond the academy walls. They echoed in the city's markets, in the soldiers' barracks, in the spires of government halls. The galaxy's most feared assassin had faltered, not against an army, not against a weapon, but against a single unarmed human girl. Everywhere he went, he felt the stares, not of fear, but of doubt. His blade, once enough to silence entire crowds, now carried the weight of a single question. Why did you stop? That night, under the pale moons, the killer stood in the academy courtyard. His armor glowed faintly under the light, his visor burning red. Students gathered in shadows, whispers thick as smoke. They knew what was coming. He had not come to kill, not yet. He had come to challenge. Alara stepped into the courtyard, calm as ever. Her braid caught the wind, her boots soft against the stone. She carried no weapon. She needed none. The crowd hushed. The killer's voice rang out, harsh and cold. You say fear does not touch you. You say your cursed world has made you stronger. Then prove it. Stand against me before them all. Gasps rippled through the students. A duel. A test. A death worlder against death himself. Ilara tilted her head slightly, studying him. Then she smiled, that same calm, steady smile that had shaken him from the beginning. I accept. The crowd erupted in whispers. Impossible. She's unarmed. He'll crush her. But some voices trembled with excitement. She's a death worlder. Maybe she can. The killer drew his blade. Its red glow lit the courtyard, casting long shadows. The energy hummed like thunder waiting to strike. Alara stood still, her hands at her sides, her eyes steady, her smile unbroken. You won't even defend yourself? The killer growled. Ilara shook her head softly. I don't need to. This isn't about weapons. It's about will. Her words cut deep. The crowd leaned closer, hearts pounding, unable to look away. The killer lunged. His blade flashed, slicing the air where she stood. Gasps filled the night, but Alara didn't move. She stood calm, fearless, eyes locked on his visor. The blade stopped again, inches from her throat. His arm trembled. Ilara's voice was quiet, but it carried through the courtyard like a bell. On Earth, every storm, every predator, every disaster teaches us the same thing. Never show weakness. Never bow. If we fall, we rise again. That is our weapon. That is humanity. The killer staggered back, his blade shaking in his grip. His visor flickered. The whispers grew louder. She stopped him again. He can't strike her. Death fears her smile. Alara took a step forward, her calm presence pressing against him like a tide. You thought fear made you strong. But fear is a chain. You wear it, and it binds you. That's why your blade shakes. That's why you cannot win. The killer's breathing grew heavy inside his helmet. He had lived his life as a weapon, a nightmare made flesh. But this girl, this death worlder child, was unraveling him in front of everyone. He roared and swung again. It faster, harder, his blade cutting arcs of red light through the air. Each strike stopped short, his arms trembling, his resolve cracking. He could not touch her. Alara's eyes never left his. Her smile never broke. Finally, his blade dropped, clattering against the stone. His knees bent under the weight of something heavier than his armor doubt. Alara stood before him, unshaken. She spoke softly, yet every word struck like thunder. You came here as death, but death does not rule us. We walk with it every day. We smile because we are still alive. The courtyard was silent. Then, slowly, the whispers rose again, growing into a roar. Deathworlder. Human strength. She broke him. The killer looked up at her, his visor dim, his voice hoarse. What are you? Elara's smile deepened, her words calm and clear. I am human. I am from Earth, and you've just lost to a girl who never flinched. The crowd erupted. Students of every species stared in awe. The legend of Earth had stepped into the light, alive before their eyes, and the killer, once a shadow that haunted the stars, felt something he had never known before. He felt small. The courtyard was alive with whispers, but none dared break the silence between the two figures at its center. The killer knelt, his blade lying useless on the stone floor. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. His visor dimmed, his one insatiable presence fractured. The galaxy's most feared predator had failed to strike an unarmed girl, and Elara stood tall before him. Calm as ever, her steady smile shining brighter than the courtyard moons. The students stared, unable to believe what they were witnessing. Some pressed their claws and feathers against their mouths. Others whispered frantically, "He can't beat her." She stood against death itself. Is this what humans are? The teachers, too, stood frozen. They had never seen the killer defeated. They had never seen him hesitate. But tonight, before all of them, he had. Elara stepped forward. Her voice was quiet, but every word carried across the courtyard. You asked what I am. I will tell you. I am human. I come from Earth, a place where every day is a battle, a place that tries to kill us from the moment we are born. The students leaned closer, eyes wide. On Earth, predators watch from the shadows. Venom hides in the grass. Storms flatten entire towns, and the oceans swallow ships whole. Our gravity crushes weaker bones, our diseases burn through flesh, and still we live. Still we rise. Gasps echoed around her. The alien students could barely imagine such a world. Their home planets were dangerous in places, yes, but to live on a world where everything was dangerous? To grow and build and laugh there? It seemed impossible, but the proof stood before them. Elara's voice grew stronger, her calm gaze sweeping the crowd. We do not survive by hiding. We do not survive by running. We survive because we face it all, teeth, claws, fire, storm, and we smile. We refuse to bow. That is what it means to be human. The whispers turned into roars. Students shouted, some in awe, some in disbelief. It's true. She's a deathworlder. No wonder the killer failed. Humans. They're more dangerous than anyone believed. The killer slowly raised his head. His visor glowed faintly, but his voice was heavy with something no one had ever heard from him before. Uncertainty. You live with death every day? Elara nodded. Every day. We don't run from it. We walk beside it. That's why your blade failed. You thought fear would rule me, but fear has no hold on those who've already faced worse. Her words struck him harder than any weapon. For his whole life, he had been the shadow in the dark, the terror that bent others to his will. But now he saw himself reflected in her calm eyes and realized he was nothing more than one predator among many. The students pressed closer. The legend of Earth was no longer rumor. It was truth spoken in the voice of a girl who had never flinched. One young Zell whispered to another, voice trembling. If every human is like her, then the galaxy has underestimated them all along. The killer staggered to his feet. His blade remained on the ground. His voice was low, ragged. You are not prey. Not like the others. Elara's smile deepened. We never were. The courtyard fell silent again. For the first time, the galaxy's future saw humanity not as fragile newcomers, but as something far older, far stronger, a people born from death itself. Carrying laughter and defiance as their weapons, the killer bowed his head. Not in respect, but in something close to surrender. His shadow, once unbreakable, had been pierced. The students would never forget this night. They would whisper it across stars and stations. across academies and empires, that when death walked into class, the human girl did not flinch, and when she spoke, the truth of Earth shook even death itself. The courtyard was silent again. The killer stood tall, but his armor seemed heavier than ever. His blade, once his pride, lay forgotten on the stone. Around him, the academy watched in awe and disbelief. For years, he had walked as a shadow across the stars, feared in every system, unstoppable in every hall. His name had meant death. But now, one human girl had done the unthinkable. She had broken the silence around him, not with weapons, but with a smile. Alara stood calm, her hands at her sides, her eyes never wavering. Her smile had not changed since the first moment he entered her class. It was the same smile now, steady and fearless. The killer's voice cracked through the night. I have ended kings. I have silenced generals. I have never failed. Until you. Students leaned forward, unable to breathe. The words themselves were history. Ilara's calm voice answered. You failed because you thought fear was strength. But strength isn't in fear. It's in standing without it. Her words rang through the courtyard, through every mind listening. The killer dropped to one knee. His gauntlet struck the stone, echoing like thunder. The crowd gasped. Never in all his years had he bowed to anyone. Not to rulers, not to armies. But now, to her, he bent. He lifted his visor just slightly. For the first time, his face was seen, hard, scarred eyes like burning coals. But in those eyes, something new had taken root. Not hatred, not defiance. Something far heavier, respect. His voice was hoarse. You are stronger than me. Gasps filled the courtyard. Students shouted, feathers ruffling, scales trembling. The killer surrendered. He admitted it. A human broke him. Alara's smile softened. She did not step closer, nor did she gloat. She only shook her head gently. No, I didn't break you. You broke yourself the moment you thought your shadow was enough. The killer lowered his gaze. He had built his life on fear. Yet in her presence, that foundation crumbled. For the first time, he wondered if he had been the prey all along, prey to his own emptiness. The academy erupted in whispers, the legend already growing. Death Worlder, unbroken. The girl who smiled at death. Ilara turned to the watching crowd. Her calm voice rose, carrying across the night. Do not mistake me. I am not special. I am human. And every human carries this will. We come from a world that tried to kill us, yet we rose. We are not fragile. We are not weak. We are what the galaxy has never understood. Students trembled, not from fear, but from awe. Some felt hope. Others felt dread. But all of them knew they had witnessed something they would carry forever. The killer rose slowly, leaving his blade on the ground. He turned without another word, his heavy boots fading into the shadows beyond the courtyard. For the first time, he left not as a predator, but as something less. The silence he left behind was not fear. It was reverence. Ilara looked up at the stars. The twin moons glowed above, their silver light catching the calm in her eyes. She smiled once more, not for herself, but for those who had seen what humans were capable of. And so the legend was born. The galaxy would whisper it in markets and palaces, on ships and in spires, that when death itself walked into class, a human girl did not flinch. She smiled, and death surrendered.